Hey guys, what is up? It is Austin here, bringing you guys another video, and today I am bringing you another tier list video. I did one of these a couple months ago with Call of Duty. We ranked every single Call of Duty game, and today we are ranking every single Resident Evil game. With the ads in the background, I know it's annoying, but I'm going to be ranking all the games that I have actually played, so I'm going to be skipping over some of them because I'm going to be honest, I haven't played every single Resident Evil game. But I will be ranking the ones that I did play. And we got them in the most basic of tiers, S, A, B, C, D, E, F. S is like a perfect game. I wouldn't change it. A is that it's amazing. I love it. There's like one or two things holding it back. B, that's a good game. C is average. D is, it's below average. It's not the worst thing ever. It has some redeeming qualities, but I don't love it. E, it's like really bad, and F is like the worst thing ever. Although I can't move these out of the tier list, so we'll just have E be the lowest rank since F will be the ones that I haven't played. So let's actually get into this, and let's start it out with the original Resident Evil remake, which I have played. I will put that in the A tier. It's an amazing game. It's got amazing graphics, amazing gameplay. It's the first remake we had in the series. And it, the only thing that kind of keeps me away from it is I'm not the biggest fan of the controls. Like tank controls, don't get me wrong, they're not the worst thing ever, but I'm just not the biggest fan of them. And I'm just not that great at the game, if I'm being completely honest. It's not a criticism to that game, but I've just never been the biggest fan of it. So I'll put it in A tier because it is great. It is fantastic. Your first time beating it is like the most accomplishing feeling ever. But next we'll go on to Resident Evil 0. Oh man. This game is a pretty passionate fan base and a lot of passionate haters. I'm going to put Resident Evil 0 into the C tier. So I think this game is incredibly average, does really great graphics. I wasn't a big fan of no item boxes. The zapping system was kind of cool, but I really wasn't that interested in the characters. I don't think they're bad. Like Billy's kind of cool, but we never get to see him again, which, he has a pretty self-contained story in this, but him and Rebecca, they're just not the greatest duo, and the bosses, in my opinion, really weren't that fun in this game either. But again, not the worst game ever, has some redeeming qualities. I will say I'm not a big fan of them, like, making a retcon to Resident Evil 1, like, not that many years after the game was released. So, whatever. Again, not the worst thing ever. So let's move on to, where's the original Resident Evil? Oh, there we go. The original Resident Evil. Oh man, I'm gonna put that in B tier. Now I know a lot of people would say it's criminal to not have this in S, and I understand the hype. However, comparing it to the remake, I think it is an inferior game. It's great, don't get me wrong, but there were a lot of limitations. It was amazing for the time. Without it, we wouldn't have the rest of the series. But do I have it as like an S or A tier? I would be lying to you if I said that I did. Now let's move on to the original Resident Evil 2. I will put this in the A tier, actually. I think it's a step up from Resident Evil 1. Really like the characters and the story in this game. Really big fan of Leon and Claire. I like the separate playthroughs. I like how each, character influences the other character throughout the gameplay. Stuff you do in one playthrough affects the other, which, by the way, apparently they're bringing back for Resident Evil 9. Really excited for that. But yeah, I'm a big Resident Evil 2 fan. I really am. Again, just the only thing that's keeping it out perfect for me is I'm not the biggest fan of the controls. But now, since we're on Resident Evil 2, let's put Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I would put that right next to RE2. Again, amazing. The story is really fun. Nemesis is terrifying. I love the different multiple pathways. Big fan of Carlos, by the way. Jill is one of my favorite characters as well. So Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, I will not put that in anything lower than like B on its worst day. Again, really, only thing holding it back. Not the biggest fan of the villain in this one, I will say. And, just not the biggest fan of the tank controls. But let's move on to Resident Evil 4, the original. Putting that in S tier. So here's the thing. The original Resident Evil 4 is the first original Resident Evil game I ever played. When I was younger, it came out right when I was around, I think it was released, 05? So I was turning 5 that October. And I grew up with my cousins playing Resident Evil 4. My cousin Caleb actually had like the chainsaw controller from that version of the game. And then, we had it on PS2 and my dad would play it. And then eventually, when I wasn't afraid of the chainsaw man in the fucking intro fight, I eventually kept playing it. I've streamed the OG Resident Evil 4 so many times on Twitch and on my channel. We've beaten it so many times. It's an amazing game. There's literally nothing I would change. Even the most frustrating parts of the original, I still think there are ways to get through it that are really fun. So the original Resident Evil 4 has to go in S tier for me. Now this is gonna be a hot take as fuck, but Resident Evil 5, I'm throwing that shit into C tier. Again, not a bad game, but the story, I'm not into it. Chris is the main character, not my favorite. Sheva, she's cool, but she doesn't really carry the cast for me. And then the controls and the gameplay, like, it was like Resident Evil 4, but thrown into a different, like, kind of thrown into a blender where they try to add new stuff while also keeping it true to that style of controls. And it was on, I think it was the first Resident Evil on the Xbox 360, and they were trying to take advantage of that next gen hardware at the time. And Resident Evil 5 has just never been one of my favorites. I've streamed it before on Twitch, and even then I felt like it was a big downgrade in quality from Resident Evil 4. And is that probably because, you know, I'm a bit biased? Maybe. Again, this is my list. And I perfectly understand people having Resident Evil 5 and S, because when you play with friends, it is fun. But my caveat to that is any game with friends is really fun. So, yeah, that doesn't really save the game for me. So I would have it here in C. And then where's Resident Evil 6? I would actually throw that right next to it. Now, I actually streamed Resident Evil 6 recently, real recently. We were doing the road to RE9 on my channel. And I did Leon's story because that's always been my favorite. But I've beaten Chris's and Ada's and Sherry's. Not fan of most of the game. Even Leon's story, really not that big of a fan of it. The actual, like, character interactions, I'm not a big fan of. The story itself, I'm not a big fan of. And the final, like, hour of the game, it was just like, I was like, I'm not even playing Resident Evil, dude. Like, I'm fighting zombie T-Rexes and shit. Like, what the fuck is this, man? So yeah, I'm not a big fan of Resident Evil 6. But moving on to the follow-up game, Resident Evil 7 or Resident Evil Biohazard, I'm gonna put that in S tier. I think it saved the series, and I know a lot of people don't like it because it doesn't, you know, go with the classic series. It's a whole new story with Ethan, and we have the mold, and it's not zombies. I get all those criticisms, but for me, I will never forget my first time doing a full playthrough of Resident Evil 7. I remember streaming it too. Shout out to those who were there on Twitch during those days. But Resident Evil 7 to me is a perfect horror game. And it turns into action at the end like all good Resident Evils do, but, you know, just rummaging around the house, trying to find all the proper keys, backtracking, finding all the secrets, the hidden coins, all the secret gun like under the house, like all that crazy shit I was in love with. And even when the story started progressing and we got to go to other areas, and, you know, we had to deal with all the other characters, I was still hooked with all of it. Even when we were on the damn ship, we were getting the flashbacks of Evelyn, and I don't mind Evelyn. I know a lot of people don't like her as a villain. For the context of the story that she's in, I actually really like her. So Resident Evil 7 to me is a perfect Resident Evil game. Now, do they have Village on this list? I would assume that they do somewhere, but I am not seeing Village anywhere on here. But who knows? Maybe I'm just glossing over it. But Village, I would put that in like A or B, just because I still think it's a really good game. I really like Village quite a lot. Is it as scary as Resident Evil 7? No. Is it a horror game? Not really. But I do like 8. You know, it's a fun game, and I think it has some really fun mechanics. It's pretty much Resident Evil 4 in the modern day before they remade Resident Evil 4. So I like it quite a bit. Next up, I'm gonna do the remakes. Let's do Resident Evil 2 remake. You guys already know where this is going. This is an S tier. It is a perfect game in my opinion. I love the Resident Evil 2 remake. It's the first Resident Evil game I actually got into streaming aside from 7. I think I streamed 7 before I did 2, or maybe it was vice versa. But 2, I remember the trailer for it, and I wasn't like super into RE at the time. Because you guys gotta understand, as a kid, the games terrified me, like genuinely. I still enjoyed the universe, but I didn't really play them. And then when I became an adult, Resident Evil 2 Remake was the one that really got me into grinding the game, streaming them, making content on them. I love Resident Evil 2 Remake. I think the voice acting for Leon and Claire is amazing. Their chemistry is great. Marvin's great. The RPD is great. The sewers are great. Everything about that game is just great. I can replay Resident Evil 2 a million times. I have replayed it a million times. Now, do they not have Resident Evil 3 Remake or 4? Goodness, this is an outdated list. I would put 3 probably in the B tier, and the 4 remake would honestly go in the S tier because I think it's a better experience than the original, and the original, in my opinion, is like a perfect experience for its time. But let's get into some of these other Resident Evil games. So Resident Evil Code Veronica, I'll put that in the B tier. I do like Code Veronica. Again, Claire, one of my favorite characters ever, so I absolutely love this game. Chris is pretty fun in it. The boss fights are, pretty solid. My biggest issue is this game, it's really easy to fuck up your entire run without even knowing it. And I will say, like, the story I wasn't the most into. And it did feel a little weird that we didn't get Leon in this game as well after what happened with Resident Evil 2, where he was going to help fight against Umbrella. But, you know, overall, it's a good game. It's a really good experience. I'd recommend it. And apparently we're getting a remake, and that remake could be the best one we ever get, straight up. I am really excited for that. Now, Resident Evil Umbrella Corps, I literally played 2 times. That is going straight in the E tier, our worst tier. I hate Umbrella Corps. It's a terrible game. We'll never play it again. And while we're on that subject, Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City can go there. We'll even put it lower to the right, the lowest of the low. That game, first off, the gameplay, not fun. It's not horror driven. It's not suspenseful. It's just shooting and shooting and shooting all these bullet sponge enemies. And then, like, the one kind of cool thing is, you know, there's the choice with, you know, Leon and Claire, but the fact that you can actually kill Leon and Claire, like, I don't know why, but it just rubs me the wrong way. I've never been a fan of Operation Raccoon City. I think it's boring. I think the characters are lame, not fun, not intriguing, and just not what I don't think anyone was asking for. Now, Resident Evil Outbreak was the first Resident Evil game as a kid I ever played. Utterly terrifying to me. But Outbreak, I will put in the B tier. I think it's a step down from the mainline games, but I still think it is a great, or I'll say a really good game. I like the characters. I like all the SP items that you can find in the game. I like that you kind of go through Raccoon City. Again, you get to kind of see the city as it falls. I really like the opening cutscene, by the way. It's the one Resident Evil cutscene that's like stuck in my head since I was literally like 7 years old, like around that time. So I would even put File 2 right next to it, because I you know what, I'll give File 2 an upgrade, because I actually like the additions they made with it. And dude, if they released Resident Evil Outbreak in the modern day where you could like better play online with other people, it might be like one of the greatest like Resident Evil experiences ever. But I do like the Outbreak games. Sorry if you can hear my phone vibrating, I'll just mute that, that's my bad, unprofessional. But Outbreak and Outbreak File 2, really good games. I think Outbreak File 2 is a step up. I do like it a little bit more, so I will nudge it into the A tier. Now, I did not play Gaiden, although I know I've seen it. I did not play Gun Survivor. But I did play Resident Evil Dead Aim. I put that in D. You know, it wasn't anything, like, it's not the worst thing I've ever played. It's playable, but I just really didn't like the setting. The characters obviously aren't as interesting. And just these kinds of, it just clearly, it felt like to me it was more of a cash grab just to cash in on the Resident Evil name than actually make a deep and fun experience. Now, Revelations 1, I would put that in the B tier. I do like Revelations 1. Actually, let me reorganize this a little bit. Not all the tiers are organized the way I want them to. But Revelations 1, I do really like. Jill and Chris as a duo. I think Chris works a lot better when he has a really fun duo. So I really do like Chris and Jill in this game. It's nice to see Jill just in general because she doesn't get included in many of these mainline Resident Evil games. So I do remember Revelations. I actually remember a demo for it on Xbox 360 that utterly terrified me when I was younger. But Revelations 1 I'll put there. Revelations 2, however, surprisingly, I was gonna put it in A, but I'm starting to remember it a little bit, and I think I'll just put it into B as well. It's a good game. Really like Claire in it. Really cool to see Barry. Never was expecting that. And I like the tag team duo like aspect to it. I like that, you know, the girl that's with Barry, she can like see through walls and stuff like that. And I believe it's Moira Burton who's with Claire. They each have their own special, you know, things to them. So there is a reason for them being there. But did I want to have a +1 constantly following me? Not a huge fan of that, but again, really good game. And then I believe, is this Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles? So Umbrella Chronicles, I'd probably put in D. Just was not a fan of it, even though it's the same, it's a rail shooter, just like Darkside Chronicles. But Darkside Chronicles, I actually think like Operation Javier was cool and all that, and the characters were better. And I just wasn't a fan of like in Umbrella Chronicles, like they were just having Jill do shit from the movies and stuff. Like, I just wasn't a fan of what they did with that game. Darkside Chronicles isn't great. It's still a rail shooter. But I very much enjoyed the interactions between Leon and Claire in that game, especially going through the RPD. It was really good. And I believe, is this the Mercenaries for the 3DS? I did play this. I probably put that in D. just because it's not a main story, it's just Mercenaries, and Mercenaries is cool, but do I want to play Mercenaries for hours on end? No, I do not. But that's all I got for this list. I wish Resident Evil 3, I should have gotten a better tier list, like Resident Evil 3 Remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake. Wish those were all included, but this is my Resident Evil tier list. I'll probably do another one once Resident Evil 9 comes out and I get like a full list. So this is just part 1, I guess you could say. But that is how I would tier list the games. Again, the F tier, I have not played these games, so this is not an actual ranking. I haven't played Gaiden, Gun Survivor, or whatever the fuck this game is. Is this Deadly Silence? I don't know. But Resident Evil, love the series. I think there's more good games than bad. Anything from C up, I would happily play. Like 6, you would have to convince me to play the C tier, but like B and up, all good games I would happily play. C tier, none of them are really bad games, and even like 6 and 5, I think they're fine games. They're functioning, they work, you know, there's glitches in them obviously, but they work and they have unique stuff to them. I'm just not a fan of them. Now everything from D and lower cannot pay me to play those games. But that's all I got for today's video. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Help me on the road to 2,200 subscribers. I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next tier list video or the Resident Evil 9 video. But see you guys then. This is Austin, and I'm out. Peace, guys.